Alright, so it has been a long time since I've had the chance to stream. And you're not gonna believe the reason why. Okay, so, short explanation as I pull something up here on my phone. We were supposed to have our street repaved this week. They even told us to move our cars and everything. Turns out, though, that the weather decided it was going to rain. So I had construction on top of thunderstorms. And if you've been here for a while, you know that my power does not do well in thunderstorms. So I didn't want to risk streaming and the whole thing cutting. Yeah, we'll begin here in a few minutes. Just gotta go get something. Alright, that should do it. Just put this over here. Alright, so I said I'd do it, and we're gonna do it. Today is the comic stream. I've been wanting to share the progress so far on my webcomic Lone Wolf, and I figured this would be the best way to do it. I mean, I guess to share a little bit of moment with all of you. This is the page that we'll be doing. It might not look like much, but we have the panels and the thumbnail. This is a thumbnail. It originally is about maybe this size. I grew it, obviously. It was probably about, like that. Just little frames of boxes and images. But this is the beginning of a comic. And today, we're going to work on the sketches. Something that I've been putting off, mainly because life has been kind of everywhere at the moment. But it's nice to just settle down and just get to work. This opening has been through multiple drafts over its lifetime. I don't really know how to explain it per se, but I guess a good way to look at it was Ivar wasn't intended to be a comic. It was originally meant to be a book, and I've brought that up a couple times. And it was through that written version that the opening actually wasn't anything like this. It was probably more similar to... well, I don't know. I guess it kind of had some similarities to this. Obviously, I'm not caring what the windows look like, because this is a sketch. But yeah, the beginning was a little different. It actually featured... well, it didn't feature Alistair at all. This little bird sketch here is Alistair. It didn't feature him at all in the original version. Actually, it had two other bad guys who I don't know if we'll have the chance to meet one day in the series. It would be nice to see them. But yeah, it had two other people involved that were more like a typical rob bank kind of heist crooks. Nothing serious. Yeah, I ended up scrapping the original version for two reasons. One, it just didn't feel like it was getting the character across I wanted from Clay. And two, it was tremendously long. I can't even begin to describe how long it actually was. I don't have it on me, so I can't really read anything from it. Not that I think anybody would want to actually hear it. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of just scribble out a body here. But put it into perspective. If a page has just paragraphs on it and no pieces of dialogue, imagine that, but for 3 consecutive pages, and all of it was just talking about the street. That was my writing ability at the time, and I did not care for that long opening when I looked back at it. I wanted to transition the comic to be more exciting, more thrilling. Oh gosh, I do not like that running pose. So that's what we're sketching right now, the more high-stakes opening of Ivar. Little tip for sketching on your comic pages, they don't have to be super detailed. I mean, I probably messed up this sketch 3 times while we were doing it, while we were talking. And during that time, I don't really care. I'm just slapping on colors and hoping they work. Looks a little better. I think I can fix the leg, though. Yeah, beauty about sketches is you can just take it apart, and I don't really care. I'll just put it back together later. This might not be the progress that you were expecting since my little break, and I do apologize. Things have been moving rather slow and too quickly here all at the same time, and I just didn't have enough of my energy to devote to the comic as I wish I had. Yeah, that's something they don't tell you about when you make comics. It is very taxing on you as a person, because you are the only creator sometimes. I mean, you can collab and work with other people, but I'm not in a position where I'm able to do that. Hence why I encourage so strongly to create something that you do enjoy. It's something that I live by, and it's honestly made it a lot easier. Yeah, this sketch I think of Alistair will do for now. It's actually probably going to be more of a silhouette, so I don't even know if it's really going to matter about the itty bitty details. These sketches are basically just to get an idea of what your page is going to look like. And no, this one doesn't have any dialogue, so we don't have to worry about any of that. Nor do I think anybody really wants to see me on stream work out what I want the characters to say. So we're just going to do a little bit of sketches. Should I do buildings in the background? And we'll draw out some cubes and see how they look. Sketches are basically just to get your idea on the page. You don't have to take them seriously. You don't have to stress out hours doing them. I might take an hour doing at least a couple of these, but that's because I have to draw all these buildings. It's important to find a pace that works for you. If you want to be as detailed as I'm being, you go on ahead and do so. But if you'd rather do what I'm doing at the background of these buildings and just make cubes, that is okay as well. Just so long as you understand what's on there. Not a lot of people are going to see the sketches. Let's take a look. I can live with that. We'll just keep that and see how that looks at the end. I will leave a kind of a little reminder by just a little bit of scribbling here to remind me that I don't think he's going to actually be visible. More of a silhouette. I don't know if I made this box big enough. That's another reason why I suggest making sketches and your panels first and foremost before anything else. Once I'm done here, I'm just going to go to the next page and sketch it. You do not want to just go straight to line art. I mean, you can if your comic's short, but if you have a long comic like mine, it's important that you take the time to make sure that your image fits on the page. Like, I'm not even sure if this box is big enough. It also helps with style consistency. A big concern I've heard and had myself towards comic making is how do you keep your art style from changing over the course of the comic? Easy answer is you can't. Comic making is a time-consuming part of your life once you take it up. And if you make something long like this, it's inevitable. Your comic style will change simply because you grow as an artist. It's both a good thing and a bad thing. One way I found that at least helps combat this is by making the sketches all in one go. Maybe not the entire comic, but a good portion of it. Like today, we're working on the sketches for the prologue of Ivar. I'm not going to be doing chapter 1 sketches until I'm done with the prologue, and so on and so on. That way, at least in chunks, part of the story should still look the same, whereas other parts might change. But I really don't see the problem in that. Sure, it can hurt us as artists. We don't want to see our old art compared to our new art. But I think it's kind of sweet seeing an art style grow over the course of the story. That's why I like comics. They're a part of you, something that you can cherish and look back on and enjoy. So I don't mind my style aging a little bit. Just a nice little reminder that, you're getting better. I think I'll add some feathers back here to suggest some movement. You can see it a little bit in the old thumbnail. Okay, now this was supposed to be him jumping. But as you can see, there's nothing to jump over, so I think I'm actually going to imply now a gap between the buildings. This is why you thumbnail your art piece, so that you can see what you initially wanted for your thought, and once you draw it out and decide that you no longer want this original image, you can break it up into what you want it to be. I like that a little better. Let's move it around though. Maybe shrink it. Move it down. Yeah, like that. Something interesting I know about this opening. In comparison to its old one, its old story, you may remember I mentioned something about it not really fitting Clay's character. And you might be wondering, why does this one fit any better? And it's true, I've asked the same questions over time. I've actually spent the majority of this week wondering how I want to open this comic. It's tough. You have to try and hook your reader and get them invested in the character early on. Otherwise, it's not that interesting to really continue with. And this is where a lot of people struggle, because when you make an original character, people don't love them yet. They don't know them. They expect to get some understanding of them by page 1 or 2. But most people aren't going to stay for 10 pages to get to know your characters. That was the big issue with the first draft of this opening. I didn't know yet what I wanted Clay to be, and I didn't even know yet what I was trying to say for his character. So as a result, the opening was very prolonged, boring, and mostly just filler detail. I obviously don't want that now, and that's one reason why I changed it to include Alistair as well. Alistair wasn't a part of the beginning, I think because I was trying to aim to have one of those mysterious figures he meets later on that ends up becoming a big turning point in his life. I didn't really care for it. It gave Clay and Alistair a really rushed relationship. And I always knew that they could have more, that they could know each other sooner in the story, and it could change the way it looks like. Actually, this brings me to an interesting conversation. It can be hard to sacrifice old parts of your work. I mean, that's one reason why I struggled with the opening for Ivar for nearly 3 years. I didn't want to get rid of old parts of the story. I think some people could find some comfort in that, knowing you're not alone. You make a story because you love it, but then sometimes things don't work out, or it just doesn't sound right. And no matter how hard you try to rework it or rewrite it or add new things, sometimes it doesn't work. It doesn't necessarily mean the characters or your writing or even your storytelling abilities are bad. I mean, that's what I thought. And it was really disheartening. But what I found instead was, once I let go, and I'm still currently in the process of letting go, but once I let go of the original vision of Ivar, it allowed me to look at it in a new lens. How do I want people to perceive the characters now, and not just what I was trying to constantly make work for the last 3 years? The process is going to be different for different... The process will be different for different people. There's no one answer, and a lot of it's going to come down to how you want to be able to tell the story. But for me, I wanted to really capture the energy of Clay's desire to be, well, a hero. That's something that he wants. He wants to be loved. But while also showcasing a polar opposite to him. Alistair was designed as this opposing force to Clay's optimism. And it just felt, to me, at least, a more powerful story to have the two already at war. Maybe not in the physical sense, but in the internal conflict we see in the words and on the pages. I wanted it to be clear that these two are like each other, but are on two different sides of the world. Oh, look at those bird feet. We don't talk about my bird feet here, especially in sketches. They're gonna look ugly. There we go. Turn them a little bit. And then fill in the building. What do you think? I think it looks pretty good. Oh, I do apologize if you hear any background noise like dogs barking. I still don't know when that construction crew is supposed to come through here. So if they do, I may or may not have to end stream early. It just depends on how loud it is. Oh, hold on. I gotta get something. I'll be right back. Alright, I have returned. Got an old cat in here. There we go. Speaking of old cat, did you know that the cat that is currently sitting in here was from my childhood? She's my childhood cat. She is 19 years old. Though if you looked her in the face, you wouldn't believe it. She's a black and white tuxedo. She's asleep right now, so I don't expect any trouble out of her. Yeah, it baffles me that she's very much still with us. I genuinely thought, oh, I was going to lose her before graduation and work and all that stuff. But no, she's still here. There we go. I like this. I could do more background detail, but this is the beauty about sketches. We don't need them. I'm just looking for, I want the background atmosphere, the motion of him jumping, and just the image of where he's landing. I don't think I need anything else at the moment because this is just for detail. We're just looking for the shapes and movement we want. The background stuff will come later when we're actually concentrating on making the panels look nice in line art. Alright, next shot is going to be kind of the same one. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste these. And we're going to move the buildings like this. That way I don't have to draw anything new yet. I don't know if this is what it's going to look like in its final version. But again, that's the beauty of sketches. Don't have to be perfect. Literally can just copy and paste stuff and nobody will care. Where was I of Clay and Alistair? Something about opposing forces. Oh, that's right. I wanted to talk about Clay. That's right. Something I appreciate about him as a character that was non-existent in the original version of my work was Clay was almost too friendly, too nice, and while that's a good quality to have, there is such thing as having a character that nobody likes. But I don't want the audience to hate him. That's something that I've struggled with through a good portion of my time designing Clay, is I didn't want him to come across as abrasive to such a point that you couldn't root for him. It's just me ranting, so excuse me for a few minutes. But yeah, I didn't want him to come off as such that you wouldn't like him, but at the same time, I didn't want to lie and almost make him too perfect. I eventually settled on a character who is genuinely hurting on the inside over his desires of being loved, but they come out instead as this almost performance-like character. Something that he wants to be rather than who he actually is. Something I actually enjoy about him. Fun fact, or just a silly fact, I suppose. Clay sometimes refers to himself in the third person. I like to believe it's a way of disassociating from his actual mistakes. so long as it no longer feels like him. Okay, we're just going to shrink Clay down really small so I could fit his legs on the picture. I don't think my sketching process would take this long if I didn't, add all the detail. I just like to know what I'm working with before I actually do any of the line art. Sometimes I can draw without having to do all this. Sometimes I just have a circle, like this, and a line. And then I can draw on top of that, and it'll be a perfectly fine image. But for whatever reason with comics, I just prefer to have a little bit more to look at. I don't know if it has something to do with the general setup, the characters, or because it's so big and so loose, because, look at all those panels. I just want to make sure I know what I'm looking at. Let's leave some feathers to suggest where Alistair went. Alright, so you might notice, in the description I said that this is going to be similar to a how to make comics stream. How do you make a comic? Well, if you're planning on printing a comic, like what I'm doing right now, something you need to put into consideration is how big your comic is. Like, canvas-wise. This canvas is... Let me find the information. Here we go. This panel is a 2063 pixel by 3131 pixel. It's kind of the same size as like an 11 by 17 inch canvas, but I think just a little bit more smaller and a bit wider. I chose this size because I think I haven't quite checked first. Always check with a printing service if you're going to print your comic. I think I chose this because it's actually larger than what most printing companies use. And that might sound kind of weird to have a big picture in comparison to the work that you are currently doing or what you're currently going to be sending it to. But trust me, you would much rather have your artwork be bigger than it's supposed to be than too small. A good example of this would be the DPI of your canvas. Every canvas comes with a DPI, and each point on it will control what your picture looks like. It's good to have at least 300 DPI. I currently work with 600. Because what's going to happen is once you send it to a printing company, I'm currently in the process of getting some shorts printed just so I can get some behind the scenes of what this comic will look like. But once you get it printed, you might have to downsize the comic slightly just so that it is manageable. The problem with doing this is that sometimes your picture will be condensed. And if your DPI is too small and your canvas is too small, you'll end up with a blurry image. So, rule of thumb, big canvas, and make sure your DPI, which are just dots per inch, are big. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, Clay's currently gonna fall. Now, I don't really know how I'm gonna want him to fall here, so I might just do some really quick anatomy sketches of him making the jump. Give him hands like wings. There we go. Now, do I like that? Yeah, I think we could move the background over a little bit. Let's move this here. I think you should probably also keep the color in mind when it comes to printing. I actually didn't do this, and I'm about to find out if this affects my stories. But it's usually better to have your canvas in a printing color, which should be right here. Mine is currently on a display option. This isn't printing. Printing is more like cyan, magenta, and yellow. I had a comic printed a long time ago as a kid, and the colors came out really dark and almost kind of ugly looking, and that might have something to do with it. So if you'd rather not have your colors altered through printing, I always suggest going with the printing style colors of cyan, magenta, and yellow. It should give you an option as well. Hold on. I probably could show you. Right here, color profile. This RGB is the regular print, and CMYK is the printer's colors of what we traditionally know them to be. So, just kind of a little tidbit of information. I didn't listen to it, so who am I to judge? But we will see how it turns out. Okay, now let's try using clay to jump the gap now. And I'm just going to add a little bit of detail to him too, just so I can remember where his hands are and body. Actually, a little bit of a goof there. He's not wearing his Ivar outfit yet. Because before there was Ivar, there was just Clay. Though Clay would be in denial of this. There was not an Ivar, there was just Clay doing his best to be somebody that he was not. Excuse me. There. Let's take a look. I could have him more crouched in this picture, because something that you want to do with motion in comics, take this Alistair jumping off earlier, is he's bracing into the jump, then flies over the gap, versus Clay who's just running and somehow jumping. This could work, but it may not, but we shall see. It's usually better to imply motion before you add motion. To me, it's always just kind of given a more smooth transition between your two works, of one moving, one getting ready to move. But you also don't want to overdo it. I mean, this is a pretty loose rule, because I've seen some people make lots and lots of motion panels in their comic. But from my understanding and what I do for my work, it's just my opinion, is don't make a comic look like an animation. Animation is animation. Comics are comic. They don't need to be the same, nor do I think they should be. I mean, I'm not joking when I've seen comics, let's pretend these 3 or 4 panels are in a comic, and they'll all 4 just be the character, like draw a little dog or something. All 4 pages will be just the dog running. And while this can work, now imagine that every single panel was some motion like that. It would get repetitive and kind of boring. But of course, I've just read comics like that before. Maybe there's a comic out there that does that correctly. Because I do think there is a time and a place where you can slow down an action and really focus in on it. But like all good things in any form of storytelling, comic, animation, books, if something is overdone, it has a tendency to lose its value. Now, how am I supposed to suggest this? I want him to fall off. Okay, I got an idea. We will just draw a very loose shape of Clay. Back to the printing idea about comics. Another thing to keep in mind is how big your current drawing is. I have a little box here. That's what this little gray thing is. The outside border, the white line, is a suggestion of where the cutoff point was, meaning there is a chance that when it got printed, that this could get trimmed off. The inside is a safe area, that everything, your text, your drawings, and whatever you put on the page should try and stay inside this circle, or square in this case, as to not get cut. Unfortunately, I can't give you an exact dimension of what that square should look like, because it's going to be different for every comic. Comic books don't have the same dimensions as a manga, and mangas don't have the same dimensions as, say, a zine. It's all going to depend on your printer and your comic, so I do highly recommend looking around for options when it comes to that point in your life to make that comic. And I know this might seem like a lot of information to have when you don't even know you want to print your comic. And that's fine. You don't even have to. You don't have to print your comic if you don't want to. If you just want to make one for you, that's even better. But I just think it's good to get into the habit and practice of using these things, because it can help you in the long run if you did decide that you actually wanted to print your comic. Okay, maybe we should move Clay down to give more room up here, because I want to kind of make a suggestion of him tripping. So I'm going to draw that real quick. Speaking of comics, I'd like to take a quick minute to talk about the series I had on the YouTube channel for a little bit called Make Your Comic Today. I mentioned in the previous video that I will be working on Season 2, and you'll be the first to hear this if you're watching the stream, but I don't know yet what I want to do with the series. Obviously, I do want to make Season 2, but process on the comic is taking a lot longer than I initially anticipated it to be, and honestly, making those videos, as fun as they are, they're not really what I want to do. And what I want to do is just focus on the art. It's the entire reason I started, and the entire reason why I make these comics in the first place. Now, this is in no way an immediate cancellation. If you're one of those people that love those videos or found value in them, they're not going away. It just might be a little while longer until I have the chance to actually get to that video. Because I say it once and I'll say it again, but you should always create for you. And if at any point I feel as if I forgot that, I just kind of need the reminder to myself that this work is, at the end of the day, for me. I'm very thankful that some of you have gotten much enjoyment out of the story. That actually really does touch my heart. But as far as those videos go, I just need a little bit more time. I do thank you for your patience. I thank you for the support. And hopefully one day I'll be able to return it with Season 2 coming out. I have no idea quite when. Just don't expect a date and time quite yet. Yeah, see, that's better. This is what I was meaning by building. He lands and he tilts. This is the building to your motion. This is the actual motion. If I had just did this picture by itself of him falling over, you may still understand what happened, but having that first picture gives you a better understanding of, oh, he got unbalanced and he fell forward. This is a time where I would allow motions like this to have a little bit more leeway. Now let's make him cartoonishly fall off the building. Should do a little bit more bend in his body, maybe. There we go. Not perfect, but we really just aiming for shapes here. Now, you might notice, I've mentioned in the beginning of the video, but you might notice that there's no text on this. I do not recommend doing sketches like I'm doing right now without your text. This scene, I had very lucky not to have any dialogue on it yet, so we could skip that process. But what you would want to do if you had a comic that they immediately started talking on page 1 is you want to type out your dialogue. You want to already have it, like, let's say, up here and here. And then you would sketch alongside it. You don't want to prioritize one over the other, like do the sketches first, then the dialogue, or do the dialogue, then put on the sketches. You kind of want to balance them to work at the same time. Because trust me, it is a nightmare when you've sketched out your whole page only to have the dialogue be put on next and find that, I don't know, villain went on a monologue and now the page doesn't have enough room to fit your characters. It's just a precaution. Make sure you know where your dialogue's gonna go and where your characters are gonna go, and let them share the space. To me, with the Lone Wolf comic, my only exception to this would be action noises. Like, you know, the cartoonish pow, wham, explosions, even growling. Those would be my only exceptions to this rule because they're kind of hard to place when the character isn't there, and vice versa. So I like getting a look at this, and then I would type in, I'm just going to write text here because I don't feel like getting the text out yet. I'll put in a cartoonish whoa, and then roll. And have them fall off the building. That would be an exception to this text rule. Okay, there we go, and that's page 1, in its roughest version. Now, I'm not going to do the line art today. Not because I don't feel like doing it, but because we can't. Remember, we do our sketches first, and then we do our line art next. So, that means we move on to page 2, which is a little bit more complicated than page 1. What you see behind you are the guidelines. If you have Procreate like I do, all you have to do is click this little wrench up here, Canvas, and then Drawing Guide. It will give you these box frames like this, and this is how you can create panels. It's a misconception about the art apps of iPads and phones and tablets, whatever you have. It's a misconception believing that some of them don't have the ability to make comic panels. They don't make perfect circles, no. The only thing we have is Eclipse, and that doesn't help. It just makes a ball. It just makes a full circle. What you can do instead is use the drawing guide. I'll make a box right here to show you. Get yourself a thick brush. I have a saved one right here. You want it to have no taper, meaning it's just a single line, no thinning like this brush, no getting a little tail at the end or anything. You want it to be one consistent line. I made this one custom by just taking a regular brush, I think it was the default, and then growing it and getting rid of its smoothing effect, so now it's all one size continuously. I mean, I'm pressing down right now and it's not growing or shrinking, it's staying the exact same. Yeah, once you have this thick brush, you're going to turn on Drawing Assist, which you can find attached to your panel or your layers, and you're going to draw out your box. There's no box for this top panel, but let's pretend it did have one. I would draw out a square, making sure that my lines cross over the gap of the other one. You want it to look like they're intersecting and then crossing. The reason I do this is so that you can trim off the excess. I'm just going to use the lasso tool here because it's easier. You're going to trim off the excess and take an eraser and gently, with Drawing Assist off, and gently remove it. This takes a lot longer than you think it does, and is it a pain? Yeah. But this is how I found a way to make panels using what I had. And there you go, see? A panel. Now, you will have to draw speech bubbles by yourself. One thing I wish I had with, was it Clip Studio? Might be Clip Studio. They have actual circles, and that would be so nice. An old app I had called Sketchbook, It also had one, but I wanted to use this app because I like it a little better. Yeah, it might take longer, but sometimes we can't have the nice things always, and we shouldn't let that stop us. If I waited until I had the ability or fundings or whatever to get a nice drawing app that allowed me to make Ivar the way I envisioned it, well, that would just be another excuse to kind of keep pushing it off and saying I'll do it later. If you want this story, and I mean really want it, the best thing you can do is just start now with what you have. It might take longer, it might have some small bumps in the road, but at the end of the day, you're doing what you love, and if you're doing it right, by, just doing what you love and not making it for somebody else, it shouldn't matter what it takes to create this story. Yeah, the hand's right, I think. You'll find a way to make this story happen if that's something you really want. I mean, most of my comics started out in little notebooks. I didn't care for sketchbooks, nor growing up did we have the money to spend on really nice ones. So I would get these ring binders that you can get for school, typically. And I would draw comics on the note paper. They weren't very good, and they were sloppy and didn't have a lot of consistent plot, but if I didn't start making those comics, I wouldn't be making this one. Same thing goes for a story that you've had a long time. If you've had the idea in your head, or like me with Ivar, has been wrestling with it for a while, first of all, there's no shame in the idea that it just sometimes feels hard. It gets difficult, and I'm not going to go out there and say that every day of the comic will be perfect. I mean, this week I didn't have the time to devote to it as I would have liked. But I did love this story. It's something that I've held on to for the last 3 years, and it's so exciting to finally get the opportunity to share this story, not just with me, with you, but pretty much anyone who might want to hear it. I don't expect... What's a good word to put it? I don't expect fame or fortune or anything Clay himself might desire. I want to be able to just make a story that touched my heart, and I don't know, maybe it'll reminisce with someone else. Okay, I actually drew him as Ivar here, but we're just gonna ignore that. That's the beauty of sketches. I will take down the drawing guide though, because it's a little confusing. Hold on, I just realized I moved my clock. I'm gonna go grab that. I got somewhere to be later, so I don't want to be late. Alright, we're still good. Now, for those curious on how you can make more dynamic panels, for those who don't want just squares upon squares, first of all, there's nothing wrong with just having a comic page that looks like this. The same panel over and over again. You can make that work. My one issue with it is that it does get a little repetitive and it can get a little boring. But without a panel making tool, like some art sites, there's really no way we can quickly make a nice narrow panel, like let's say something like this. There's no way to make that without some slight adjustments. Here, I'll actually show you right now. Drawing guide. Okay, so this is how you would make the panel. Turn on Drawing Assist. You're going to draw your first line. Whoops, wrong ink. There you go. You go to draw your first line, your second line, and then start at the bottom here, hold down, And it should make kind of a sticky line. It wants to stay to your Apple Pencil or finger or whatever. I prefer using Apple Pencil for this. You get a bit more precision. And then you bend it like that. And look, now you have a slanted panel. Of course, you have to do all the removing of the excess still, but it is possible. I got the drawing guide down. Okay, so what's going on right now? Well, currently in the comic, Clay is apprehending a known criminal, the Twilight Avian, but is not doing such a heroic job as we might expect from a traditional style superhero. If anything, that's one reason why I reminisce with this opening so much. It's very much more Clay than I think my first one ever was. When I first made the story, I set out to almost make him heroic. Only upon realizing that Clay is anything but heroic. He has good morals, he has a heart. But most of the time, it's just trying to get himself out there and people to see the quote-unquote real him. Clay, unfortunately, due to his poor luck, has landed himself in a situation where he now has to confront the Avian more one-on-one, which is what this is slowly building to. Yeah, we'll take the drawing guide down again. I have a really big shot here, so this might take me a minute. I take a lot more time to sketch out the background to what this is called. This is an establishing shot. If you don't know what that is the panel in your comic that sets the tone for the rest of their conversation that is currently on the page. Meaning it lets us, the audience, know exactly where the characters are and where they relate to each other throughout the rest of the scene. In this case, we changed locations. Little quick tip, if you ever change locations in your comic, be sure to have an establishing shot and let us know, your readers, where we're supposed to look. Look at this. This is an alleyway now. We are no longer on the rooftops. I want to show the difference by having Clay small and then the world around him bigger, more closed in. It's not as narrowed in on them running along the rooftops no more. Now, I don't really care so much what it's going to look like, but I do need to have some idea of what the background will be before I actually make the comic page. Clay actually might be a little bit too small. I think I'm going to grow him just a little bit. But yeah, a comic page without an establishing shot can be really narrow, really claustrophobic, and typically people will get a little uncomfortable. I mean, you can still read a comic without establishing shots, but it feels so nice when you're reading a story and they change locations. Well, let's use traveling, for example. When they travel to a new spot and the camera zooms out and lets you really take in not just the beauty of the artwork, but also the attention to detail of the environment, the time of day, who's currently traveling with them, how do they relate to each other, because maybe, I don't know, maybe one member of this traveling party isn't in a good mood. You can show that in the establishing shot. Have him sit further away from everyone else. Maybe he's lagging behind. There's a lot you can do with establishing shot. They do, unfortunately, take a lot longer to create because they're larger pictures. They're pretty much a full-scale drawing when you think about it. But they're usually worth it in the end, in my opinion. Now, I'm not an expert in comics by any means. I love talking about them and I love studying storytelling, but I don't think that makes me an expert. I'd much rather just keep learning and educate myself on multiple angles of this craft. Because I think anyone with talent would tell you, is that practice makes perfect, and to never stop learning. Because the truth is, there is no perfection. There's just what you know now and what you will know later. And I know it can be overwhelming when you're working on a comic and it just doesn't turn out the way you want it to. It just doesn't look right. I mean, I was tempted when I was a kid to give up drawing because my art didn't look good. But it's because I didn't, and I actually stuck to it, that I saw the progression. It's like a sport. Typically, you don't give up a sport you love just because you're bad at it. If you love it, you keep at it. Same with drawing. It's a muscle. You train, you grow, and then you take what you learn and apply it to the next thing, even if your next project isn't perfect. I mean, I'm learning from this is that I could do to learn to draw more background pieces. Because, I mean, look how bland that looks right now. It's empty. But, it's just not a skill I trained. I'm not going to give up on my comic. I'm going to practice. Now let's take the thumbnail away so I can take a look. There we go. I think I'll leave the items in the background empty for now so that I can actually draw the rest of this page. Oh, there he is. We get to see Clay up close now. Okay, I want to kind of look up. So yeah, my greatest advice probably to take away from this is never stop learning. I'm never going to stop learning. You shouldn't never stop learning. We all could learn. Well, funny enough, no puns intended. We could all learn to keep learning. It's when we fool ourselves, I believe, into thinking that we can't learn something or that we can't grow our knowledge any further, that we can become two things. Overwhelmed, tired, non-motivated, or overly confident and unaware of our current flaws. And I think that's the beauty of art. It's not perfect. It's not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to be automated. It's not meant to be created quickly and sloppy. Unless, of course, you're drawing like a mosaic or something. But art is, no puns intended, is what it was called for years. It is subjective. Everyone looks at art differently. Not everybody's going to feel the same way about the same piece. I mean, even the stories you read online, the comics that you follow, not everybody's going to get the same information out of them. Interpretation is interpretation. And I think that's why we like it. It's engaging, it's exciting, and it's a world that perhaps we might not understand, but it's because we don't understand it that we take our time, we devote ourselves to it, and we grow. If we were good at things, say comic making, the day we started, picked up the pencil, then it probably wouldn't be as fun. Though I would argue it would be so nice to draw everything perfect. But if every art piece was perfect and it was all the same, it would be pretty boring, wouldn't it? Okay, well now we need to draw the little ha-has. Oh gosh, I had a conversation about these types of text with my sister the other day, and I just have to share it. Have you ever read a comic and I mean actually read it, not pull it up, read it in your mind, and smile when you see H-A-H-A-H-A? No, I've said read it out loud. It makes it so awkward and it's so funny. Like, ha. It's just ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha. Like, that sounds so cringy. Same thing with characters panicking. I've written it before. When a character freaks out, there will be like a huff and a puff to suggest deep breathing. But you don't read it that way. If you're reading it in your head, you're reading it as them actually breathing. But if you take a moment to read it out loud, it's just huff and puff. I don't know, I always thought that was just really funny. Reading comics out loud and reading all the text that wasn't intentionally meant to be read that way. Real quick, I'm just gonna put a action here. You see, crash is one of those action words that I don't think's awkward. I think POW, P-O-W, POW. I think POW's more awkward to read out loud than crash. Okay, let's take the thumbnail down and see how it looks. I think it looks pretty good. However, I do think I will add a feather or two. Because I don't want us to forget Alistair. I want us to know that he is still somewhere nearby. So we'll just draw these little feathers. Be little tiny ones by Clay's feet. There. Page 1 and page 2. Now, moving on to page 3. See, now this one actually has its dialogue. I'm not so crazy on the font currently. It just kind of looks strange to me. So I'm just going to leave it closed and I'll work on it later. But I do have it, so I can always check and see. This is what I meant. I want to check and see where it is before I put the sketch down. Right now, though, we're just going to focus on Clay standing up. I actually don't know how I wanted to stand up yet. Like, do I want to do a crouch? We can do a crouch. Yeah, it looks a little weird. Yep, and it would seem that we have reached our time. Can't work my hand much more these days. Been going through a little bit of wrist pain lately, so we gotta close things here. Thank you so much to those who are watching, and I hope that the little bits we've learned about comics along the way could be helpful to you. I hope to share more, not only about the progress of this work, but the characters themselves next stream. Now, it won't be Friday. Well, next Friday. It will probably be the Friday after next week. Like, every other Friday. That's what I'm aiming for. Have to kind of break these up a little bit because I got things going on that I need to put my attention to. One of them being this comic. But yeah, there might be a few changes coming to my overall work schedule. I'll keep you updated when that happens. But until then, keep making stories. And I will see you in the next stream. Thank you. Bye. Whoops.